G'day guys, my name is Caleb, otherwise known as the Critic Kebab, and I've got a new movie review, and it's for Terminator Dark Fate.
I'll be back.
Welcome back everyone. I'm again doing this review a little bit differently, but if you do enjoy the video, make sure you hit that like button. And if you are new to the channel, click subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future content. This review is for yet another Terminator movie. But what makes this one special is that it is a direct sequel to Judgment Day. Only the first and second Terminator movies count, and everything else that came out afterwards has been discarded. So in a way, this is James Cameron's attempt at completing a defined trilogy. Whilst the well-marketed return of producer James Cameron left many fans hopeful, the franchise has developed a very bad reputation for pumping out mediocre entertainment. Now personally, I've only seen the first two Terminator movies and Genesis, so thankfully I could go into this movie relatively excited without a super bad taste in my mouth, because the first two are classics, and Genesis is, well, very forgettable. But truthfully, when this movie concluded, not only did I feel let down, but I also felt really resentful. So let's get into this review. I'll tell you what's good in this movie. Linda Hamilton as the infamous Sarah Connor is easily the best part of the movie. Her character isn't given the best material, but Linda Hamilton elevates every scene that she's in. Where she is emotionally at this point in her life is really interesting, because she still has that tough exterior, but is really charming and confident when she needs to be. Plus she continues to look like a total badass and commands your attention when she's on screen. Gabriel Luna as the new Terminator and bad guy in this film was also really good. The acting overall is satisfactory, and as an overall action movie, it does succeed. But what this movie does, and what many action movie sequels fall into, is trying to do everything bigger and better and have more explosions. This film 100% falls into that category. That's all I really liked about this film, honestly. The acting is good, and the action scenes, most of the time, are entertaining. But besides that, this is yet another hollow and unoriginal sequel that severely disappointed me. Coming into this movie, I was anticipating the film to go back to basics, rediscover what made those original two films so effective, and hopefully build on that and give us a satisfying third film. But instead, Dark Fate follows the structure of Judgment Day and gives us a story that is not fresh or invigorating. This movie in a lot of ways is similar to Star Wars The Force Awakens, whereby it follows a lot of similar plot points from the previous film, but where The Force Awakens succeeded in bringing enough new and interesting elements to make it enjoyable, Dark Fate fails because it doesn't bring anything remotely engaging or new. Of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger returns, but the explanation as to why I did not like at all. I'll explain myself more in the spoiler part of the review. There is also a lot of mystery elements included into the story that are designed to build intrigue, but when the reveals finally do happen, they just fall flat because they're just super obvious. And another failure in the screenplay is that they don't build enough importance around the reveals, so when they do come, it just doesn't feel as important as the film is trying to imply. But one of the biggest downfalls of this movie is that it's not really about anything substantial, especially when compared to the previous two films. Those movies said something about love and humanity, fatherhood and fate. Very impactful themes, but this movie just doesn't resonate anything new, and the material they try to regurgitate is nowhere near as impactful. Dark Fate just doesn't emotionally resonate like the original two movies did, and despite the tone and visual aesthetic syncing up very well with those movies, this one just does not live up to those standards, unfortunately. And my last piece of criticism is that there were many visual effects shots that were unconvincing and I did not like. An example is, there are many shots of Gabriel Luna's Terminator exoskeleton under his skin, and it just didn't look great. Plus, when he's assembling in liquid form, the visuals reminded me of the visual effects for the Venom symbiote in that film. and let's just say I did not like the effects in that movie. The reality is, so much of this movie just looks fake. Some of you may be thinking I dislike this film. The truth is, I enjoyed myself whilst watching it, but when I was on the way home and thought about this movie a little bit more, it did make me feel a little resentful and let down. In saying that, this is not a complete dumpster fire, and honestly, this is a suitable action movie sequel, but as the third film in this newly established Terminator trilogy, I think it's incredibly disrespectful to the legacy. As an action movie by itself, I would typically recommend it, but as a Terminator movie, and more importantly, the one that continues the story and mythology after Judgment Day, I cannot recommend this film because it makes too many fatal mistakes, and for myself, and I think many other people, the Terminator movies still conclude after Judgment Day. Those are my spoiler-free thoughts on the film. So now I'm going to transition into my spoiler chat, where I discuss the spoilery moments that really stood out to me. So if you have seen the film or you don't care about spoilers and want to know what really pissed me off, stick around for my spoiler thoughts and my grade. Now, you have been warned. Alright, let's start with the biggest mistake, that being the death of John Connor. In the opening moments, we have a flashback with young Sarah Connor and Edward Furlong as young John Connor from T2. And we have this small moment of happiness and freedom. And then it's snuffed away in an instant, when a Terminator with Arnold's face appears and shotguns him in the stomach. I can understand from a screenwriting perspective how this would be a jaw-dropping opening to the story. And it was, but it did not have the intended effect on me. The whole point of Judgment Day was to save John and change the future. But instead, they now completely undercut that accomplishment at the end of that movie and kill him off anyway. Plus, it's revealed later on that Legion essentially replaces Skynet, so the apocalypse cycle continues. This story detail comes at the expense of those two previous films now, because in the story, John Connor literally died for nothing, because the Terminator still rose up and took over. Dark Fate ruins a lot of the achievement and satisfaction earned in T2, just so they could reboot with a new character who basically has the same character arc as Sarah anyway. I hated this reveal, and what makes it worse is that it was a Terminator from that timeline that doesn't even exist anymore. It makes complete sense that the Terminators would send multiple units in time to kill John, but once that future is changed, surely they would dissolve in time, or something, I don't know. But then we get into the rules of time travel, and I'm sure you could find an excuse to make it work, but I'm not going to do that here. Regardless, this was a stupid decision that made me severely unsatisfied with the direction of the narrative. Moving on from that, I did not like the explanation as to how Arnold Schwarzenegger got weaved into the story. The explanation is that he was that Terminator that killed John Connor, but after the mission was accomplished, he had no purpose, but eventually found some by slowly developing a conscience, gaining some guilt, and also raising a human family. I personally did not enjoy this story thread, and it's fair to say I felt a similar way to how Sarah was feeling, but the overall complications for the overarching narrative are too large for me to be okay with this screenwriting decision. It felt like Arnold was just there because it was a Terminator movie, and I don't even think he really needed to be in it, honestly. I don't know, am I wrong? Let me know your opinion down in the comments below. Do you agree or disagree with what I'm saying? Anyway, the next thing that I want to talk about is some of the stuff in the finale, but first, how stupid was it that no one cleaned up Carl's house for clues? When Gabriel Luna discovers the picture on the fridge, I just felt the presence of a screenwriter contriving that moment, just so the characters could all get back together again and fight. I just feel like characters like Sarah and Grace would have been a bit smarter before they left. But whatever. A lot of the action in the final set pieces was quite fun, even though it did break my suspension of disbelief several times. The moment with the planes colliding mid-air and everything going on inside the plane, as well as the Humvee falling back to the ground, a lot of it was quite ridiculous, and it definitely should have killed at least the bare human characters like Sarah and Danny. Also, the moment on the waterfall was a bit much for me. I know this is a world with killer robots and sci-fi themes, but the physics and realism was really stretched in my opinion. And my last nitpick is that the final fight choreography in the kill box wasn't too inventive. Tim Miller did a good job framing and editing the fights, but it was nothing I hadn't seen before. I know I'm comparing it to T1 and T2 a lot, but deservedly so. Those films gave us action sequences that we'd never seen on film before, such as when Arnold attacks the police, or when a real-life helicopter chases a truck underneath a bridge. This movie's action just looked fake and felt generic. Well, those are my thoughts on the 6th Terminator entry. Overall, a disappointing third film in this James Cameron trilogy, but a serviceable piece of action entertainment. I'm going to give Terminator Dark Fate a B-. I hope this movie doesn't do well financially, because I think it's time for the Terminator franchise to stop. The reputation is beyond repair, and yet another swing and miss at trying to continue the original story. But now I want to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on the movie, and are you dissatisfied like I am? Now, if you did enjoy the video, make sure you hit that like button, of course comment below, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future content. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video.